Whether you're a hardcore enthusiast or someone simply seeking a bit more of an adventure, no step in planning a trip off into the unknown is more crucial than making sure that you have the right vehicle for it. And today's manufacturers have noticed this more than ever, offering us everything from big trucks and SUVs that are built to tackle literally anything, all the way down to examples that started their life as mild-mannered crossovers. And while some companies like Subaru have spread that love across their entire lineup, others, like Mazda for example, have only just started to breathe life into that adventurous spirit. But with their latest creation that I have here, I'd say they might be onto something. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so you are seeing it here. We are in what Mazda considers to be a decently special edition of the 2026 CX50. Now, it's called the Meridian Edition, and before we even take off for our drive today, I wanted to very briefly break down what the Meridian or a Meridian even is. In geographical terms, it's a line drawn that separates the north and south poles around the Earth. So basically, Mazda, like I said, is taking a little bit more of an adventurous, a geographical approach to the CX50. But considering that they've outfitted this thing, as you probably saw in the beginning, with a little bit more of an outdoorsy sort of look, well, I figured we'd start off here in this dry sort of fishing hole with a little bit more of a rough terrain to see how this thing handles a little bit more off the road versus on the road. Now, we're not going to go blasting through any mud or anything like that, but I just wanted to see if there's really any difference in the way this thing handles when the roads get rough. So we will put the Skyactiv 6-speed automatic transmission into drive. We do have standard iActive all-wheel drive, and off we go. And immediately, you can already feel that really isn't that much difference in the suspension from a standard CX50. I mean, unlike a lot of big SUVs and trucks that I've taken through this same terrain, it feels like Mazda didn't really do much in the way of actually, you know, helping out with this sort of thing. So I am just taking it nice and casually. Honestly, she's not doing half bad. The suspension is kind of rough, to say the least, and we're only doing about 15 miles an hour right now. And, I mean, it's doing okay, but you definitely feel more of that sporty nature in the suspension. That's definitely something Mazda has definitely put in a lot of their vehicles over the years, and this one, honestly, doesn't feel any different. But now, I think it's time we take this thing out on the pavement and see what she's made of. And now that we've got this thing out on the open pavement, does the Meridian Edition behave any differently than any ordinary CX50? And the answer is no. Unlike a lot of other off-road ready vehicles that have suspension made by some of the biggest names, you know, Bilstein, Fox Racing, etc., this really just has an ordinary Mazda suspension. Still a little bit firm, and still enough to let you know exactly what sort of road surface you're driving over. Now, with the Meridian Edition specifically, you can get two different versions of it. You can either get the naturally aspirated, or you can get the turbo version like what I have here. And anybody who knows that 2.5 liter turbocharged Skyactiv engine up front knows exactly everything else about it. On regular gas, 227 horsepower and 310 foot-pounds of torque. But of course, you have that little ingenious secret built into this engine where if you run it on premium fuel, that goes up to 256 horsepower and 320 foot-pounds of torque. But apart from that, and apart from just about everything else about this car, it doesn't feel really any different than any other CX50 that I've driven. And considering I've driven both the normal turbo version, and I've even driven the hybrid version of one of these, I honestly don't see what makes the Meridian Edition so special. Apart from its looks, it really is just one of those cars that can take you from point A to point B and still have plenty of get up and go, just like Mazda expects from any single other one of their vehicles. And also to be expected from a Mazda, if you want to put on your turn signal, for example, not only is it the softest sound you'll ever hear, but if there's somebody in your blind spot, for example, you will still get all the typical, bleeps, blings, bongs, all that sort of stuff. So Mazda really hasn't lost its sense of character either. But as a complete package, the CX50 does still offer you exactly what you'd expect from a vehicle of this caliber and size. The visibility is actually pretty good in here. I can still see out of the back window with pretty solid ease. The door frames do sit up a little bit higher, so you might want to rest your arm down on the armrest down here instead of up on the door frame like I like to do. But overall, the only real hindrance I have is there is a teeny bit of a blind spot just over my left shoulder because, well, I sit a little bit higher, and of course I like to sit a little bit further back, so I guess that all kind of depends on your driving position. But again, like I was saying, as we start to increase our speed into traffic here a little bit, you can hear the road noise is a little bit more intrusive. I'm not expecting it to be a soundproof room with all the insulation in the world, but after driving, again, the hybrid, the normal one, and even some of Mazda's other products, this one isn't necessarily the quietest one of their vehicles that you'll ever drive. But then again, all of them kind of have their own varying levels of road noise, so this one, I would almost say it's a little more towards the upper echelon of what I would consider as unacceptable road noise. But of course, the benefit of getting the turbo version like this isn't so much the lack in fuel economy and perhaps just dealing with it. It's more so when you need to pass somebody, you don't even need to go down into the Mazda Intelligent Drive and put this thing all the way up into sport mode, although just for testing purposes, I will go ahead and do that. And it's one of 4 different driving modes that you have. You have sport, normal, off-road, and even towing mode, which if you get the turbo version like this, even with the optional trailer hitch at the back, you're talking about a maximum towing capacity of around 3,500 pounds. But again, the real benefit of a turbo engine is if you need to pass somebody, just put your signal on and you don't even have to bury it. And immediately you get that little whisper of that twin scroll turbocharger under the hood. You know what this kind of reminds me like, these Mazda turbo engines? This is gonna sound so incredibly weird, but it almost reminds me of like an old Saab turbo, like a 9.3 or a 9.5. You probably saw the episode of Top Gear when Jeremy was testing one of those as well, and he talked about something called the mid-range clout. The rate it will go from like 50 to 70 or even 80 miles an hour in this thing is just insane. And of course, in smaller cars like a Mazda 3, it definitely gets up and goes even quicker. But for a car that's almost 2 tons, this thing will move even if you just leave it normally like this. And of course, with only having 6 gears in its transmission, the gears are a little bit more long-legged than most people would expect, but man, it's not quite shove you back in the seat kind of fast, but it's almost like riding this invisible wave of torque as you accelerate down whatever piece of tarmac you're on. Whew, that never gets old to me at all. But even as I'm heading down the freeway looking through my heads-up display that I've got on this one, I'm reminded that driving the Meridian Edition isn't just about the way it handles on the road. Yes, the steering can be a little bit soft in normal mode, and of course it firms up when you're in sport mode like I just was. But overall, really where the Meridian Edition shines more than any other place is no matter where you go, whether it's off in the wilderness or whether you pull over in your favorite parking spot, it's all about when you step out and actually see what you've been driving. Now, while many of us, including myself, would say that this Meridian Edition drives like any other CX50 you'll ever get behind the wheel of, when it comes to its styling, like I said, Mazda is almost there, but not quite, because if you're going to build a vehicle for any kind of off-road purpose, well, there are certain things that buyers of these types of vehicles would expect. things that you don't find on one of these. For example, you can see there are no exposed tow hooks, and where underneath you might expect some giant metal skid plate to prevent maybe breaking off your oil pan or something, instead, there's just a bright silver accent, and that's about where the skid protection ends. However, Mazda's simple yet elegant philosophy still shines through in this car's design. So for the grille, you have the shark nose mouth with the matte black honeycomb finish. You also have black accents running around its exterior, and of course, Mazda's signature full LED adaptive headlights. So you have LED high beams, low beams, daytime running lights, and even auto high beam assist. And as for its LED turn signals, which are some of my favorites because they fade in and out rather than just blink on and off, those have been moved a little bit further down the front fascia. Now, some aspects of this car I was expecting to not be functional, but then it turned out I was wrong. So those little design elements here on the outer corners of the bumper, those actually do contain minute little air skirts that go through the front fascia and exit out through the front wheel well. But for over $40,000, even for a standard Meridian edition, unlike this one, well, you would expect to get some tech, but this one doesn't nearly have even the full assortment of what you might get on a Premium Plus, but it's still noteworthy nonetheless. This one, for example, has the adaptive radar cruise control, front and rear park assist, and a lot of other goodies within that same category. But again, for that sort of price tag, and again for what this car is aiming for, I would have expected maybe just a little bit more. Now, unlike some of these mild-mannered vehicles that suddenly have been outfitted for adventure, the CX50 really didn't grow in any sense of the word. I mean, its length, its width, and even almost its height are exactly the same as any other one you'll ever find. Really, the only difference you'll find anywhere on this thing is thanks to an 18-inch set of black and machine-faced alloy wheels wrapped in 225/60 series Falcon Wild Peak all-terrain tires. The difference it makes? About 0.2 of an inch in terms of this car's overall height. Again, not really something to write home about, but if you want to grow a little bit more vertically with this thing, throw out an extra $1,200 or so for something that Mazda calls the Apex package. Now, to me, that sounds like something that's more focused for the track rather than off-road, but I digress. And what you get for that extra little upcharge are some mud splash guards down below. You get these blacked out crossbars up top, and even atop that, a fully blacked out and metal roof platform. Now, the only thing I can think of that you're going to need to change aside from the initial price tag of this thing when you add on something like that is maybe a little extra space in your garage, because if you're somebody like me who doesn't have a very big garage to begin with, well, you better hope you don't hit the door on the way out. And even though as it sits, we're talking about a vehicle that, need I remind you, costs over $44,000 US, well, if you strip away things like this optional roof platform, the crossbars, the special wheels and tires, and even these specialty graphics up here on the hood that say CX50 Meridian Edition, well, what really are you left with? In this case, it would be a decently well-optioned polymetal gray metallic CX50 Turbo, already a pretty decent vehicle in and of itself. I remember testing the original CX50 Turbo a few years ago, and I didn't really have a whole lot to complain about with it. But whether or not all of this stuff is a necessity is really to be debated. But what is nice about this is that Mazda did include some standard stuff for the money as well. So these gloss black exterior mirrors, which as you can see are power folding, they have blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, and of course their little LED turn signals on the side. Also, as part of the package, we have a panoramic sunroof. Now, I wasn't necessarily a fan of this because not only when I open it am I staring out into this huge metal roof platform up here, but when you actually open it with the roof platform in place, well, I wasn't necessarily greeted by the most comforting sound either, as there was a deafening roar of the wind whistling in between this giant platform and the sunroof itself. But I digress. Perhaps the thing that everybody expects for the money is Mazda's advanced keyless access. Now, the key itself, we've seen it a million times before. You've got lock, unlock, power tailgate, and panic here on the side of the key, and the releasable key blade that comes out of the back of it. And just like before, it works exactly the same. You want to unlock the car, you grab the handle, and if you want to lock it, you can either touch the handle on the side of it, or when you walk away from it after doing whatever you need to do, it will actually lock itself. And while the face of the CX50 might have a little bit more of that Mazda elegance to it, as for its posterior, leaves a little bit to be desired there. I won't say it's the ugliest Mazda booty I've ever seen, let alone the ugliest rear end I've ever seen. However, I do have one main little gripe with it, and it is only just nitpicky, and I'm sure you're gonna call me out on it at any moment now. And it's this sort of blank space up here. They moved the license plate down so far that basically you're just left with a huge space for, I don't know, family stickers, bumper stickers, whatever you want to put up here. And I think that might even actually make it better, if I'm honest, because just in its standard form, I just think it's a little too minimalistic, I almost want to say. I'm not going to say that though about the LED taillights, let alone the darker badges for the Meridian edition here, or even for its standard dual exhaust or that little bit of silver trim along the bottom of it. All of those things actually make sense, and I do like them. However, you'll also notice one other key little detail, which is an optional trailer hitch. And like I was mentioning on the test drive, but if you've made it this far, need I reiterate, this car in its turbocharged version can haul a maximum of 3,500 pounds. But that's not the only place where it can haul stuff. This is a crossover after all, so you open this power tailgate, and there's no hands-free access on this one because, well, I for one wouldn't want to whack my shin on that trailer hitch down there. But first of all, you'll notice that the loading surface is still actually quite low, which means you don't have to lift stuff up and over a giant hump to get stuff here into what is initially about 31.5 cubic feet of total cargo volume. And also you might notice in the back here we have some all-weather mats, which is again an extra cost thanks to the weather package. But if you decide that you do need a little bit of extra room, and quite frankly I don't see why you would, but if you do, you can fold down these 60/40 split fold rear seats, either using the little handles here on the inside of the tailgate or by using the latches on the seats themselves. And once you've got the seats folded completely flat, you're looking at a little over 56 cubic feet of cargo volume. Still plenty usable, even for its size. Now, while this Meridian edition might look all rough and rugged on the outside, or at least to the best of its ability, when you're in it, this is where you see nothing but pure Mazda. Not only some of the best mainstream Japanese craftsmanship that I've ever seen in any car's interior, but the thing that hits me first and foremost about this specific car is its terracotta leather interior. I love the black accents. The seats are actually quite comfortable. I wouldn't say they're the best in the industry, but still, I love the interior color more than red, gray, black, any other color you can think of. I love an interior that looks like this. And of course, to embellish on that, anywhere you see things like black leather, like here on the doors, across the dash, it is completely traced with Mazda's signature color match cross stitching. The only place I didn't find it was on the interior rim of this heated leather wrapped steering wheel, which is still a signature Mazda design. But within it, you'll still find all the same controls that you'd expect in any one of their other products, from your multimedia controls and even the info button that controls the digital part of your gauge cluster here, all the way down to just your standard Mazda active safety features. You do also have paddles on the back, which I'm not really a big fan of. They're kind of too small for my book. I mean, if they were a little bit bigger, yeah, it might be a little bit intrusive to some people, but I still think they're just not quite my cup of tea. But nonetheless, you start looking around and you think, well, there's not really much to distract you from the job of driving. Exactly the point behind that whole simple yet elegant philosophy. And it even extends to the infotainment. Now, I've only got a 10.25 inch screen up here on top of the dash, but there's a couple things that are strange about it. First of all, it is set so far back that you have to reach to do anything up here. Even though you've got Mazda's command station down here below, this screen is also touchscreen. Yet again, something I wasn't quite expecting. I'm more than used to using the Mazda command station down here, but yet to do things like wireless Android Auto, wireless CarPlay, or really do anything within the screen itself, let alone Mazda's online navigation, which this one apparently didn't have activated for some reason, it mystifies me to no degree why you would set a screen so far back and then use it as a touch screen when you simply have a control station down here. But within all of that, there is one saving grace, which is Mazda's 12-speaker Bose premium audio system. I've always loved their Bose systems. I still think they have a great partnership going, and to be honest, this one was no different. But in between messing with the screen or even using the Mazda command interface, you'll also notice that in here, there's really not much to distract somebody from solely the job of driving. You look at the climate control, for example. I mean, these tiny little almost piano key-like buttons for the main functions, temperature knobs, and some sizable, clearly labeled power, heated and ventilated seat controls, and even the button for the heated steering wheel. Now, the power button was a bit of a mystery because it's over here on the far right, so you kind of have to reach for it. It would have been nice if maybe they swapped that with the heated seat button over here closer to me, or maybe just made a space for it in and of itself, but neither here nor there. You look down below, you've got a little bit of extra space, which surprisingly, the wireless charger you would expect maybe to be here in front of what are two decently sized cup holders, but they're not decently sized enough to hold a 1.5 liter bottle of water without at least making it rub up against the heated and ventilated seat controls. That wireless charger is actually hidden down here behind a traditional gear selector, your Mazda command system, Mazda intelligent drive, and underneath a split center console. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten in a Mazda product where you have to reach underneath, grab the center console, slide it back, and then lift it up. I mean, Topher, you and Emily, you guys probably know what I'm talking about with her CX50. But either way, this one, it just opens from the center, and it just makes things so much easier. And again, it's simple, yet everything works. That's really the best part about this whole interior. Now, while the front occupants might have all the gizwizzes and gadgets, here in the rear of the CX50, it's not necessarily the worst place I could ever sit either. I mean, sure, at over 6 feet tall with the driver's seat in its position where I find myself most comfortable to drive, it's not exactly what you would call commodious, to quote Jeremy Clarkson correctly. I mean, yes, my knees are in the back of the seat, and you can definitely see there, first of all, is no mat pocket right here, but I mean, the rear of the seat is curved to allow for a little bit of extra legroom, but it's definitely nothing that a little man spreading couldn't help if so desired. Now, there is one mat pocket in the back of the passenger seat, and I also feel that, I don't know whether it's my height or whether the seats actually are sat a little bit more stadium style, but I feel like I have such a commanding view back here. I can see out of every window without any sort of hesitation. But once you actually do look around and you decide you need to make yourself a little bit more comfortable, well, you can pull down the center armrest with the two little sizable cup holders, about the same size as what you get up in the front. And you can also make use of the heated outboard rear seats and two USB-C chargers at the back of the console. But perhaps the biggest saving grace of them all is the rear air vents. There are still some crossovers in this category and even at this price point that don't have those. So it was nice when I actually got back here originally just to try it out for myself, and I actually felt a little bit of air conditioning on my face. Definitely something nice, especially if you're on a long road trip and you start to get a little bit warm back here. Well, everyone, the sun has gone away and our time here with the 2026 Mazda CX50 Meridian Edition has now drawn to a close. Now, here's the thing. Would I say that this is the best CX50 out of the umpteen amounts of them that you can buy? Well, no. Yes, it does look quite adventurous, and if you are that sort of person that has that adventurous spirit welling up inside of you every time you go out the door, well, yes, it can still fit into your lifestyle, but at over half the cost of an off-road ready pickup or SUV, yet not nearly having the off-road credentials it deserves, I wouldn't say it's the best thing you could have if you need to go into the middle of nowhere. But if you are somebody who's just looking for a small, practical crossover with good value, an elegant profile, and still plenty of pep in both naturally aspirated and turbocharged forms, then the CX50 in general is still quite the viable option. Now, if perhaps you're stopping by this video for the first time, or perhaps you've learned something about this Meridian Edition today, please give this video a thumbs up, and also while you're at it, hit the subscribe button down below, because trust me, I love sharing all of my journeys, my adventures, and all of these opportunities with all of you. And without your support, I don't think any of this would have ever happened. But in the end of it, guys, I hope you enjoyed the review, and I will see you all next time. Take care, everybody, and stay safe.